because they have nowhere left to go. I am afraid to go out in the sun now because of the holes in our ozone. I am afraid to breathe the air because I don't know what chemicals are in it. I used to go fishing in Vancouver, my home, with my dad, until just a few years ago we found the fish full of cancers. And now we hear of animals and plants going extinct every day, vanishing forever. All this is happening before our eyes, and yet we act as if we have all the time we want and all the solutions. I'm only a child, and I don't have all the solutions. But I want you to realize, neither do you. You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up in a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert. I am only a child, yet I know if all the money spent on war was spent on finding environmental answers, ending poverty, and finding treaties, what a wonderful place this earth would be. At school, even in kindergarten, you teach us how to behave in the world. You teach us not to fight with others, to work things out, to respect others, to clean up our mess, not to hurt other creatures, to share, not be greedy. Then why do you go out and do the things you tell us not to do? Do not forget why you are attending these conferences, who you're doing this for. We are your own children. You are deciding what kind of a world we are growing up in. Parents should be able to comfort their children by saying, everything's going to be all right. It's not the end of the world, and we're doing the best we can. But I don't think you can say that to us anymore. Are we even on your list of priorities? My dad always says, you are what you do, not what you say. Well, what you do makes me cry at night. You grown-ups say you love us, but I challenge you, please, make your actions reflect your words. Thank you.
The year was 1992 when she gave that speech, and joining us this morning, it's 2019. It's not the girl, but Senator Russ Feingold. He is part of the State of those campaigners who are talking about how we can be able to have resource mobilization for conservation. Senator, welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you so much, Rita.
Now, we live in a country where when it comes to nature, we are very, very blessed. But it also does make sure that as an economy, we have something on the table for each and every household. But for a number of people, when we think of conservation, it's far from us. We think these things will just somehow sprout up eventually. So resource mobilization and conservation, how does that happen?
Well, it requires a commitment. It requires a commitment in local communities. It requires a national commitment, and it requires an international commitment. And that's why I'm here. I'm so thrilled to be back in Uganda, in Kampala. But this time I'm here working with a group, it's an NGO from the United States called the Campaign for Nature, which is just one group of many around the world who are trying to get all the countries in the world to agree that we need to make sure that the protected areas, the natural areas, are actually protected. And our goal is that 30% of all the natural areas in the world would be protected by 2030. So it's an ambitious goal, although this country is already, as you say, working on much of this. You have national parks, you have forested areas, but we believe that Uganda can be one of the countries that's a leader or a champion in this area. You have among the greatest biodiversity of any country in the world, and one of the top countries. And I think you have people all over this country who are interested in this. So we're here to encourage Uganda to keep moving in that direction, and to see if we can all work together to do something to make sure that what's called the Convention on Biodiversity, which came out of that Rio conference, which the young lady was speaking at, that gets the same kind of attention that the climate change issue is getting. They're both very important issues. They both require international attention.
Okay, and where do we bring the Ugandan? That one Ugandan, despite the government, but that one Ugandan who's at home, who's watching this maybe at work, where do they come into this conversation? What do they have to do?
I think they should encourage their neighbors and their friends to ask that the people in the country and in the government and others join the other countries in saying, yes, we want to be part of this. Now, Uganda is already a party to the so-called Convention on Biodiversity. And so there are officials that are already involved in trying to make sure that Uganda moves in that direction. But we think Uganda can be a champion. We think Uganda can be a leader. So we would encourage people to say, we have disagreements here in Uganda, just like we do in the United States. This is something maybe we can all agree on. And so let's together be a leader country to encourage the countries of the world to join together. There's actually going to be a big conference in China in October of 2020. Remember the Paris Climate Accord? This will be like that, where all the countries come, and we want Uganda to be one of those countries that people say, there's a country that's helped take the lead.
Time after time, nature has sort of taken care of itself. We have never had the task to take care of it. It has come to a time when we need to. But there are a couple of things come into mind when we talk about conservation now, is climate change, and there's the population is growing bigger with every single day that passes. And there's demand for this population to take up some of the space that nature has been taking up. We need trees for firewood, we need trees for more paper, we need trees for, local dailies to be printed and all that. There is demand for that, but there is demand to conserve it as well. So clearly here we have chosen to, go for, nature will always take it will take care of itself. We'll find a way. We're human beings. We will find a way, because we're not going to cut down on the population. We're not going to say, well, to save nature, let's kill 5,000 people just to save it. So are we fighting a losing battle here? That it's nature. It's what's happening all over the world. The population is growing bigger. The demand is there for us to destroy nature so that we can take some of its space.
Well, we have to hope that we're not fighting a losing battle, David. But we're not sure. I mean, the history of the planet, not the history of human beings, is that there have been 5 extinctions. This, they say, may be the 6th. And this one may be human-caused. So we're not just talking about tension between population and development and the environment. We're talking about the possibility that human life, certainly as we know it, could be dramatically restricted. In other words, the people in this country may have a quality of life that is much less, or it could threaten their lives. So a recent report of the United Nations, sponsored by the United Nations, that came out in early May, says that up to 1 million species are threatened with extinction. So obviously that sounds bad, but if these creatures become extinct, it affects crops. It affects the quality of the soil. It affects pollination. It affects the ability to live. If there is overfishing of waters, which occurs in some parts of this part of the world as well as other parts, people can't eat. And so you need a certain amount of protected nature just to survive. So yes, nature has an amazing ability to rebound, but there comes a breaking point. There comes a point of no return, a tipping point. That's where we're almost at. And that's what we are trying to prevent by encouraging every country in the world, including Uganda, to say, look, we've got to figure out a way to protect a certain percentage of the land and the water and keep it natural.
As growing up as kids, and you well know that,
just a lot longer ago.
Yeah, when your parents tell you not to do something,
yes,
they always have to tell you why you shouldn't do it, and usually they tell you, Russ, you need to stop playing with fire, because when you do, it's going to burn you. And that way, you know that if I play with it, it's going to burn me. Sometimes, well, being kids, you really inquisitive, try it, and then it burns you. Right now, what do you tell the human race today? What do you tell that person watching TV today? Let's treat them as a child now, because they need to know that we need nature. But if we don't do what we are supposed to do, what happens?
Well, it's very similar to the kinds of things we're telling people about climate change. If we don't act on that, we talk about our children, how we love our children, how we love our grandchildren. I happen to have 5 grandchildren. Do you want to be a grandparent or a parent who leaves that child in a world that is unlivable? Where you say, well, we love you and we're glad you're having a good childhood, but you're going to be in a place where you can't live. And so it is the duty of our generation, your generation, to make it clear that we have to take dramatic action to make sure that the biodiversity in this planet continues, or they're not going to be able to eat, they're not going to be able to have clean water, they're not going to have the kind of air that they need to live in. And so that is the unfortunate reality that we have to say, you cannot do this to your children and grandchildren.
Well, Senator Ross, when we talk about that and it starts to hit home that maybe there are things we need to change, the alternatives seem to be quite expensive. Because in the end, if we're saying we're not going to do this, there has to be something else we have to do. Can we afford the alternatives? And when you start to say, okay, for my future generation, I can bear the cost now.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily come here and say, yes, you need to do this, you need to preserve this land, and figure out a way to pay for it. That's not good enough. This country does not have unlimited resources. It's already put a lot of money into preserving natural spaces. So what we are looking for here, this group, Campaign for Nature, what the Biodiversity Convention is looking for, is a commitment by countries, but other countries that have more money, wealthy individuals, and others around the world need to help pay for it. So let's say Uganda says, we're going to create this, have another national park, or we're going to make sure this forest is not cut down. There need to be resources, and that is part of our goal, is not just to preserve 30% by 2030, but to work very hard to help provide the financing going forward. And that is a very fair request from countries that not only don't have a whole lot, but traditionally have not had a whole lot and are fighting hard to develop. We know you have to develop this country, but you have a chance to develop it in a way that you don't make the same mistakes that we sometimes did in the United States, where we cut down all the trees. It was called clear cutting. All the trees in my state of Wisconsin. That was a big mistake. This does not have to be done here. And in the long run, the country will be better off. But yes, the resources have to be, there has to be help.
So when we come in and say we will do this, we will be a part of the campaign, but the resources come from somewhere else.
I'm not saying there'll be no resources from here, but I would say that if we're serious about this, there have to be a lot of resources from other places. You know, apparently at this point, depending on how you measure it, Uganda has preserved something like 16 or 17% of its natural area. Some people say it's as high as 30%. That's great, but there are countries that won't be able to do that. I mean, Uganda may even be able to do more, but some of them are already so developed that you can't. So those countries that already have the development, they may need to help pay for Uganda to continue to do what it's doing and to do more.
Okay, well, as Uganda at this point in time, we are trying a few steps when it comes to conservation of our environment. And we'll just be taking you live to where we have Kasim Ngabirano of Environment and Social Safeguards International in Wakiso right now, where they're launching a campaign to plant trees on all major roads within the area, that is in the entire Kira municipality, as a way of curbing effects of climate change resulting from the loss of green cover. Let's take it to Kasim now. Kasim, can you be able to tell us more on that campaign? Kasim, can you hear me? Well, on your screen you can be able to see Kasim Ngabirano, who's going to be giving us information of Environment and Safeguards International that is seeking to actually launch a campaign to plant trees on all major roads within the entire Kira municipality as a way of curbing effects of climate change resulting from the loss of green cover. Kasim? Okay, do go ahead and give us an update on the campaign and the planting of the trees.
Hello?
Yes, Kasim, can you be able to give us an update?
Environment and Social Safeguards International is a company that is seen by the, hello? Environment and Social Safeguards is an organization that has a focus on social safeguards. It has a focus on environment, green community agenda, and also impact assessment. Now, we have chosen Chira municipality to be able to wake up and push the agenda of environment, because there's been a lot of degradation. As you realize that Chira municipality is one of the fastest growing municipalities within Wakiso district, and there has been a lot of influx of people coming from other divisions into municipality. There's a lot of degradation, there's a lot of reclamation of the swamps. So our focus now as environmental safeguards is make sure that we recover the lost plants, the lost trees, the lost green cover. We need to be able to make sure that we replace it back. So our campaign today is to make sure that we do a lot of plantation within the small municipality, especially on the major roads. And then also need to be able to go and look at schools. Make sure that the schools also begin the process of planting trees wherever we can find. Then the other issue is basically about waste management. The cavera, the plastics, and the straws that are clogging the trenches, we need to make sure that we collect them with the help of all plastic companies in Uganda that can be able to give us any support.
Well, thank you so much, Kasim. Now, on that end, what are you expecting from the public today?
I beg your pardon?
What are you expecting from the public when it comes to this campaign? Should they just simply plant the trees?
What we're expecting basically is that we have had a very good coordination with Chira Municipal Council. The top brass of Chira Municipal have accepted to sign a memorandum with us, an MOU with us. At 10 we shall be signing the MOU, implying that they have accepted to work with us and give us any support. At the moment, we have already signed up, we already got an approval from NFA, where they are giving us enough trees for this particular function. We're expecting to plant over 10,000 trees within Chira municipality in the next 8 months.
No, he is at Kira municipality at this point in time.
We are going to demonstrate the trees we can plant. We are going to plant around 2 trees within the mayor's gardens, and also plant around 5 trees on the major roads to demonstrate the kind of activities we are going to do.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kasim. Now we bring the conversation back to the studio. Senator Russ, as we look at that, is that a drop in the ocean when it comes to conservation, or can we say that's a very significant bit of things?
That is not just a drop in the ocean. It's just not one tree in the forest. It is the power of young people working with a man like Kasim to try to make sure that their own future is good. And, you know, I know from person that have been involved in politics, there's nothing that gets your heart more when you see young people trying to help solve the problem. Sometimes it helps older people get busy and solve problems. So this is inspiring to me. You know, I come here, this is one of the first countries we've been to, and it's not just the people in the government, but it's the people themselves that are out there today trying to reforest areas and understanding that people will have better lives if these forests and other natural areas are preserved and expanded. So all I can say is congratulations to him and to the young people. It is very inspiring.
Senator Russ, is it just a case of planting trees now? Because yes, you just saw a group there, and their plan, which is, you say, is a good plan. Recently, we had Uganda Revenue Authority in Uganda, I think it was, or UNRA. We're going to plant a couple of trees alongside the roads. Is it just a case of planting trees now for us to be able to preserve or conserve this? Is it just a case of wake up in the morning? If we get every Ugandan to wake up in the morning and plant a tree, is that all we need to do?
No, it's not. It's very positive, but we need actual whole areas that are protected. In other words, forests, bodies of water, whether Lake Victoria, whatever it might be, make sure that there's not overfishing. We have to make sure that as much as we care about agriculture and farming, that it doesn't intrude in a bad way on the natural areas, because it will actually make the farming worse. We have to have protected areas where some of the very unusual animals can live. You know, you've done wonderful work here with gorillas and other animals. These animals need an environment that is protected. They can't survive in, sort of the cities, that you would go very well. So there's a lot of different activities that have to occur. But I don't want to say this doesn't help. It does. If we have the attitude in the city that we want to do this, and we have the attitude in the farm areas that we want to do this, and in the natural areas, in all the areas, the same attitude, working together, it'll make a big difference.
Thank you very much, Senator Russ Feingold. Now that I know what Feingold is, it's
what it sounds like.
It's what it sounds like. Thank you very much for joining us this morning,
Thank
and we hope that this Ugandans take heed and take action on this, and hopefully we can save our world.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Senator for Russ Feingold from the U.S. state of Wisconsin, USA, joining us this morning for our Take Note conversation. In case you want to fall in and share your ideas on how you think we can conserve nature, we really, really need to, then you can do that. The hashtag is morning@NTV across all social media platforms. We'll be back in a few.
Watching Morning at NTV.
Yo, hey, yo, what's up? It's the illest show.